This is Madam Janet, the owner of the most popular restaurant in Alaba, Lagos. You can see people gathered, not to haggle, but to eat. Customers lined up in the restaurant, disputing who will be served food next. Customers are even washing the plates themselves just to eat food at the restaurant. The food is not free, neither is it cheap. In fact, the restaurant is way more expensive than other restaurants around. But yet, people still struggle to buy food with their own money. What is Madam Janet using to cook her own food that made it so special? Well, let's find out. Janet's restaurant stood at the heart of the market, an unassuming spot with faded yellow walls and plastic chairs that wobbled on the unwavering ground. Yet, what the restaurant lacked in aesthetics, it made up for in its irresistible aroma. Janet was a tall, graceful woman with skin like polished mahogany and eyes that seemed to hold untold stories. She wore simple clothes, a plain wrapper and blouse, and always tied a black scarf around her head, never revealing her hair. Her food was legendary, and not just in Alaba. Traders from all over Lagos would come for a taste of her smoky jollof rice, pepper soup, and egusi stew. Every morning, before dawn, Janet arrived at her restaurant, lighting the firewood stove and filling the air with the comforting scent of boiling stockfish and sizzling peppers. By noon, a long line would stretch out of the restaurant, men and women sweating under the Lagos sun, waiting patiently or impatiently for their turn to be served. What made Janet's food so special? No one could say. The taste was beyond description, rich, complex, and almost enchanting. As her fame grew, so did curiosity. Other restaurant owners in Alaba watched with envy. They tried to bribe her workers, spy through the kitchen windows, and even sent people to ask Janet directly for her recipe. But Janet only smiled her quiet, enigmatic smile and kept cooking. The more people tried to uncover her secrets, the more mysterious she became. The success of Janet's restaurants reached absurd heights. By the time the market opened each morning, people were already forming a queue long before she even arrives. At first, Janet managed the growing crowd gracefully. She hired two young girls, Chika and Amina, to help with serving, but even with their help, the demand was overwhelming. One scorching afternoon, the restaurant descended into chaos. The line was so long that some customers had been waiting for nearly 2 hours. People were sweating, hungry, and irritable. The smell of fried plantains and goat meat stew only made them more restless. A man in suit, clearly from the mainland, shouted in frustration, "I don't care if I have to wash my own plates. Just give me food," he yelled. Janet, without missing a beat, handed him a sponge and a bucket of soapy water. "Wash and eat," she said simply. To everyone's shock, the man obeyed, scrubbing a plate clean, and within minutes, he was eating, mourning in pleasure as he devoured his pounded yam and egusi soup. From that day on, it became an unspoken rule. If you wanted food fast at Janet's, you wash your own plates. No one complained, they just wanted her food. But as her restaurant flourished, whispers grew louder. She must be using juju, voodoo, some said. No one's food is that good. Maybe she's not even from here. Janet ignored the rumors, but behind her calm demeanor, something darker seemed to lurk. The other restaurant owners of Alaba Market were growing desperate. Business had dried up. Even long-time regulars had abandoned them for Janet's magical cooking. Mama BC, who had been selling amala and ewedu in the market for over 15 years, was particularly bitter. She must be stopped, she hissed one evening, gathering a group of envious cooks in the back room of her restaurant. The room was dimly lit, with a single flickering lantern casting long shadows on the cracked walls. A strong smell of palm oil and dried fish hung heavy in the air. The small gathering included Tunde, the owner of Suya stand, Iyashade, who sold moi moi and akara, and Baba Kunle, who ran a modest buka, serving beans and yam porridge. They sat around a wooden table, their faces tense with resentment. This Janet, she came out of nowhere, Baba Kunle said, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. 3 years ago, nobody knew her name. Now she's taking food from our children's mouths. Ah! Iyashade clapped her hands angrily. Her food is good. Too good. No one's food is that good without something unnatural. She's using juju, voodoo, Mama BC declared, her voice low and certain. I'm sure of it. The others nodded in grim agreement. They plotted to uncover Janet's secrets. That night, after the market closed and traders had gone home, they waited. The market was never truly silent. There were always distant sounds of generators, dogs barking, and the occasional honk of a passing danfo. But the food stores were dark, their cooking fires long extinguished. The group stood just outside Janet's restaurants, the shutters drawn tightly. The faint scent of pepper and smoke still lingered in the air. I know someone who can help us, Mama BC whispered. She beckoned a young man out of the shadow. His name was Shola, a lean, sharp-eyed boy known for his sticky fingers and his ability to slip in and out of places unnoticed. Shola, Mama BC said, pressing a faded 1,000 naira note into his hand. Go inside. Find whatever she's using. Charms, talismans, anything. Bring it to us. Shola hesitated, glancing at the shuttered restaurant. Even in the dim lights, Janet's eatery seemed to loom larger than it should have. The shadows around it thicker, darker. Ah, Mama, this woman, she's not ordinary, Shola whispered. Are you afraid? Mama BC challenged, her voice sharp. Or do you want more money? At the mention of more money, Shola straightened, pocketing the cash. I will go, he muttered. He slipped into the alley behind the restaurant. The back door was made of wood, swung smooth with age. To Shola's surprise, it wasn't locked. It creaked open with a soft groan, and he stepped inside. The air inside was warm and thick, heavy with the lingering scent of spices and fried oil. The kitchen was immaculate, pots neatly stacked, the counters wiped clean. But something about the silence felt wrong, unnatural. Shola moved carefully, his flashlight's beam cutting through the darkness. The kitchen shelves were lined with jars of dried herbs and spices. Thyme, curry powder, crayfish, nothing unusual. He opened a large cupboard, half expecting to find strange charms or animal bones. Instead, he found neatly folded dish towel and a stack of clean plates. As he moved further, into the kitchen. The silence grew heavier, as though the walls themselves were listening. Then he noticed something odd. A small door in the far corner, partially hidden behind a stack of firewood. It wasn't a door he'd ever seen before. He approached it slowly, his heart pounding. The handle was cold and smooth. He turned it, and the door swung open, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. Shola hesitated. Every instinct told him to leave, to get out while he could, but curiosity and greed won out. He descended the stairs, the beam of his flashlight flickering as though the darkness was swallowing the lights. At the bottom was a small windowless room. The walls were covered in faded Ghanaian kente clothes, and in the center of the room was a low wooden table, surrounded by half-burnt white candles. On the table sat a large, blackened cooking pot with a wooden spoon resting inside. The air was thick with the scent of something ancient. Shola stepped closer, peering into the pot. It was empty, but when he touched the rim, the metal was warm. A faint sound began to fill the room, a low, rhythmic chanting, growing louder and louder. Shola stumbled back, his flashlight shaking in his hand. The chanting grew to a fever pitch, the air thick with unseen energy. Panicking, Shola turned to leave, but the staircase was gone. The door he had entered through was nothing but a smooth wall of bricks. No, no, Shola whispered, his breath coming in short, panic gasps. The room grew colder, the chanting now coming from all around him, as though the walls themselves were whispering. A dark shape moved in the corner of his vision. Shola dropped the flashlights. The beam spun widely, casting frantic dancing shadows across the room. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the chanting stopped. The staircase was back. The door stood open. Shola didn't think. He ran, stumbling up the stairs, crashing through the kitchen, and bursting out into the cool night air. Mama Bisi and the others waiting in the shadows saw him emerge, pale and shaking. "What did you find?" Baba Kunle asked eagerly. Shola stared at them, wide-eyed as though seeing them for the first time. "There is something in there," he whispered. "I don't know what, but it's not normal." Mama Bisi grabbed his arm. "Did you find her juju?" Shola shook his head violently. "I won't go back," he said, his voice hoarse with fear. "She is not what you think she is." The group exchanged uneasy glances and all went home to their various homes. The next day, Mama Bisi went to Shola's home, hoping to coerce small information out of him, but she found him in bed, burning with fever, muttering incoherently about, eyes in the dark and voices from the wall. He wouldn't say another word about Janet's restaurants. After that, the other cooks decided to let the matter rest. Whatever secret Janet kept hidden, it was not meant to be uncovered. Janet's business continued to thrive. Her business continued to be the talk of the town, and her restaurants flourished. One cold afternoon, the market was its usual chaotic self. Traders shouting, Okadas weaving dangerously through the narrow alleys, and the relentless Lagos sun baking the asphalt. Amidst this lively scene, A sleek black SUV pulled into Alaba Market, drawing curious glances. A man stepped out, tall, with skin the color of roasted coffee, a confident stride, and the unmistakable air of wealth. He wore a crisp white kaftan, gold-rimmed sunglasses, and polished leather shoes that seemed too clean for the dusty market. His name was Kwame, a businessman from Ghana, in Lagos for a major trade deal. After a long morning of tense negotiations, Kwame was hungry, famished in fact. "Where can I get good food around here?" he asked his Lagos business associates, a stocky man named Kunle, wiping sweat from his forehead with a sleek handkerchief. Kunle grinned knowingly. "There's only one place, Janet's Restaurant," Kunle said, pointing down a bustling alley. "You won't find a better food in all of Lagos." Kwame raised an eyebrow. In Ghana, he was used to good food, spicy wache, rich groundnut soup, and kelewe. He doubted any Lagos joint could impress him, but hunger is a powerful motivator. "Let's go," Kwame said. When they arrived, the line outside Janet's Restaurant was, as always, impossibly long. The sun glared down on the crowd, but no one seemed to care. The smell of grilled fish and spicy tomato sauce hung thick in the air, making Kwame's stomach growl audibly. "Ah, this woman must be a magician," Kwame joked, stepping into the queue behind Kunle. The closer they got to the entrance, the stronger the aroma became. A rich blend of garlic, ginger, and scotch bonnet peppers with a smoky undertone that made his mouth water. The restaurant energy was vibrant. Loud conversations mixed with the clatter of plates and spoons. But as Kwame approached the open doorway, something strange happened. Janet emerged from the kitchen, carrying a large tray of steaming jollof rice and grilled turkey. Her black headscarf, as always, was tied tightly around her head, her expression calm and focused. She looked up and saw Kwame. The moment their eyes met, Janet froze. The tray slipped from her hands, crashing into the floor, scattering rice and meat everywhere. A gasp rippled through the restaurant, but Janet didn't seem to notice. She just stood there, staring at Kwame with wide, terrified eyes. "Janet," Kwame whispered, his face draining of color. He took an involuntary step forward, confusion and disbelief wearing on his face. Janet took one step back, then another. Then all of a sudden, she disappeared. No one could find her again. For a moment, there was stunned silence. Then panic erupted. Customers screamed, chairs toppled over, and within seconds, the restaurant emptied as people fled, leaving half-eaten meals and overturned drinks behind. "What just happened?" Kunle asked, painting beside Kwame, who stood frozen in the empty doorway. Kwame didn't answer. He was still staring at the back door, his mind racing. "It can't be her," he whispered more to himself than anyone else. But the look in Janet's eyes had said otherwise. It was fear. Not the fear of stranger recognizing you. No, this was the fear of a person who knew they had been found out. And Kwame knew with absolute certainty that he had seen Janet before. Not here in Lagos, but in Ghana. And the last time he had seen her, she had been lying in a coffin. When the dust settled, Kwame sat with his business associates, trembling. You all saw her? He asked. They nodded. She's supposed to be dead, Kwame said, his voice barely above a whisper. Confused, they pressured him for answers. I knew Janet, Kwame revealed. Not here. In Ghana. In Kumasi. She ran a small restaurant, just like this one. Her food was incredible, just like this. But she died 3 years ago. The associates exchanged uneasy glances. She died in a ghastly car crash, Kwame continued, staring blankly at the floor. The car she entered burned down, and her body was found inside. I was at her burial. I saw her coffin go into the ground. Word spread through Alaba markets like wildfire. Janet was a ghost. People who had eaten at her restaurants, the ones who had fought over her food and washed their own plates, began to feel sick with dread. The market elders gathered, consulting a local priest. She was never alive here, the priest said grimly. Her spirit crossed the sea. She came here to continue what she could not finish in Ghana. She had a restaurant in Ghana which thrived so well, but out of jealousy, she was killed by some envious neighbors in the market who caused her car crash. That night, a small group of men went to Janet's restaurant to cleanse it, performing rituals and burning incense. But Janet was gone. Her home, a modest apartment not far from the market, was found empty. The only trace of her was a pot of stew still simmering on the stove, as though she had stepped out for just a moment. But she never returned. Janet's restaurant stood empty for months. Its doors locked, its windows boarded. But some nights, long after the market had closed and the streets were silent, people swore they could smell the rich, savory scent of her cooking drifting through the air. Some claimed to see a tall woman in a black headscarf walking through the market at dawn, her arms full of fresh vegetables. To this day, in Alaba Market, the story of Janet's restaurants lives on, a tale of hunger, mystery, and a woman who could not let go of her crafts, even from beyond grave. No one has dared to reopen the restaurant. A taste of her food lingers, not on tongues, but in dreams. And those who ate there once upon a time say that nothing else would ever taste quite as good.